Hello and welcome to Las Vegas Pitch Presents. I'm here with my friend, the home caddy, Max Hecker. Hecker Real Estate, how are you today?
Great to see you, my friend.
Nice to
Thanks
see
for having
you
me
as
on.
always. So we are going to have such a blast today. We're going to talk about arms.
What a fun thing, these things, right? No,
Yeah.
This is an arm, right?
That's your arm, yeah. What is an arm?
What is an arm? Well, in the loan sense, it's a loan type that's pretty attractive to some people, but also has some high risk to it. And I think there's some importance to it because a lot of people took them with new builds or in the last 5 to 10 years decided that that was the way to go. And they have an expiration date on them, and some of those expiration dates are coming up right around the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, you're boots on the ground. You're talking to clients all the time. Your clients are coming to you saying, gosh, I'm in this arm, and my arm's going to start going up. What do I do?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, one option is to refi, which is something that a lot of people are going to have to do because when those arms go up, Bill can confirm to this, they go up pretty fast and at high rates. So that's one option. The other option is to sell the home and buy something else and get yourself into a 30-year fix, or take another risk and do another arm on another bill. But when those rates go up, they go up quick. Bill, what are the options?
So the breakdown of the arm, there's so many different types of arms. There's like a 1-year arm where it adjusts up and down every year. There are more typical arms that are like a 5, 7, or 10-year arm. So the first 5 years, it's fixed at a lower rate. If it's a 7-1 arm, it's fixed for the first 7 years. If it's a 10-1 arm, it's fixed for 10 years. So depending upon when these people got their mortgage on an arm, and it was pretty attractive at a time, even when rates were low during the COVID time period, they were able to get even a lower rate on the arm, but lo and behold, it's going to change. So let's take a look at like the 5-1 arm, okay? So that's fixed for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, guess what? It has adjusters. It adjusts upwards, and it can typically be the initial adjustment can be 5% for the first adjustment after 5 years.
Yeah.
Some of them are 6%. And then it can go up or down, typically 2% up or 2% down. So people that got arms back in the day when the Fed funds rate was going down, 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 it worked in their benefit.
Yeah.
In this time period where they raised the Fed funds rate 11 times, since 2022, it's come down a little bit, but it's going to impact their interest rate, and they could basically go from a 2.5% to a 7.5% like that overnight, which is higher than what the market is right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're trending in the mid-6s all over the place, depending on the loan type, potentially into the low 6s if you have an opportunity to get into an FHA or VA loan. But with that in mind, that's really one of the reasons why this is really important to talk about, is because over 1.5 million consumers have taken arms during the COVID timeframe. And whether it's a 5 or 7-year arm, those are coming due. The 5-year arms are coming due, shockingly, right now. Yeah. So if you had that,
like 2020 was right when COVID pretty much hit.
Yeah, and people were still offering. They're always offered. They're offered right now, right? They're just not necessarily as desired because the rates on those are maybe just slightly better than they are in the going market for a 30-year fix.
Yeah, they call it the yield curve, the difference between a short-term yield like 1-year bond versus a 30-year bond. There's not a big difference between those two right now. It's when those vary a lot is when the arm becomes more attractive. But it hasn't been that attractive, honestly, for the arms right now.
No, I mean, I've got a client right now that's dealing with this at the moment. Just discussed this with you before we started, and the conversation really aligns with the arms coming due. What are we going to do? They decide we're going to sell. So they're selling and buying something else, but now they're talking about maybe going back into another arm because, again, if you have 5 or 7 years on those arms, depending on what your thought process is and where, the American dream is not let's live in the home forever anymore. It's let's buy and move up and ascend every 3 to 5 years. Well, if you're doing that 3 to 5 year plan, an arm could work over and over and over again, but it's a risky play. For this particular client, they're getting out of one arm and having to decide whether they're going to go into another one or go to a 30-year fix. But the whole point of getting out is because they had the arm in the first place. So that's why we're talking about this. It's really important to think about all these things. you've obviously built up a lot of equity. So you can refi and not pull out the equity if you don't want to, just to get a better rate or to lock in that rate, or again, talk about the sell. And on the back end, when you're buying and consuming again, it's not just the loan we're talking about, but there's all these beautiful things because of what's going on in the real estate market that we can even talk about 2-1 buy downs and incentives for buyers that are getting out of their arms on the seller side. They're going to become consumers. What are they going to do? A lot of sellers are offering incentives, and these can be utilized in a multitude of ways for your buyer and consumer.
100%. And there's a risk tolerance that some home buyers have when they go into an ARM. And you kind of have to have that calculated risk. How long am I going to be in the house? Typically, when I talk about an ARMs, I've been doing this 32 years. I've sold a lot of ARMs at various times in my career. But generally, you want to make sure that you're going to be out of that house during that time period of the ARM period.
Yes.
And that's typically where they go. And some have more risk tolerance than others. Some are like, oh gosh, I'm going to be in this house forever. I'm not going to do it. But the 2-1 buy down is a huge thing right now in the marketplace. And essentially, if you look at what the builders are doing, the builders are selling homes.
Yeah.
Why are they selling homes?
They're selling homes because they're able to offer a clean product, but also a loan percentage rate that's below anything that a normal lender is able to offer necessarily. It's because they're offering these buy downs in their own departments to suppress the rates, whether it's temporarily or permanently. They're doing it, and that's incentivizing a lot of consumers to go that route.
Well, it's the biggest pain point of buyers. I'm talking to buyers every single day, and they're like, that mortgage payment is too high. That doesn't fit my budget. It doesn't fit my budget. So the builders are in business to sell homes, right? That's what they do. They are a business. So they go, okay, well, what's the pain point of the buyer? The pain point of the buyer is mortgage payment. How do we attack that?
Exactly.
Let's do a buy down. Let's give them a low rate. So they just build it into the price of the home, and they offer them these big incentives. But on existing homes, you've got individuals who are emotionally attached to the house. They're like going, oh my gosh, I would never accept that for my house. But if you build it in and you understand how a buy down works, the cost of a buy down, it makes a huge difference and can get more eyeballs on the listing, right?
Yeah, no, on the sales side, offering something like that can make a bunch more consumers be available to your products, because now they see it as a viable option, whether it was higher in price than they thought they were ever able to attain. But now looking at the numbers, they go, oh, this is exactly what I was going to get with a lower price point with a higher rate. And again, as we talked about, you have time with these temporary buy downs to talk to your lender over and over again, keep that relationship going, and they're going to be your best friend during that whole temporary buy down situation. Because if something were to come up that is advantageous, there's things with the temporary buy downs where that money's not lost forever, is it? So talk about where that money goes. It goes into some type of an impound account, right? And then gets drawn out.
Yeah, so let's give an example. So for example, a 2-1 buy down means that the interest rate is 2% lower than the normal rate as of today in the first year, 1% lower in the second year, and then it goes to the rate as of today. So if you've got like a $400,000 loan, right? 2% lower, that's $8,000 savings in the first year, approximately. $4,000 savings in the second year, and then it goes to where the rate is as of today. But let's say, for example, a recession hits. We haven't even talked about that. It could potentially be a recession. If the interest rates go down, right, there is no reason why that buyer cannot refinance after they are in the buy down. But that $8,000 that they got, that maybe they're 6 months in, so they have $4,000 left over in the first year, $4,000 left over in the second year, $8,000, and they refinance, that $8,000 reduces their principal balance when they go to refinance. So it's not lost money. It's money that they will utilize, and it's there for them.
It's their money forever. It's something that, again, is able to be drawn on out of that account, but is leveraged in a multitude of ways and makes that 2-1 buy down even more attractive for both buyer and seller to consider as an option in this market, especially as we're going through these things.
But think about it, how much would your payment be of $8,000 a year less? It'd be approximately $700,
It's
right? A
unbelievable.
little like 680, somewhere in there. $680 less per month in the first year, and then it's gonna be probably about $340 less the second year. So that's a big number to the home buyers, right? Because when a new home buyer goes in, they're like freaked out a lot of times with their first time home buyers. They don't know what to expect. They gotta buy the landscaping tools, they gotta buy furniture, they got this. So it allows them to settle into the house, get comfortable with what's going on. And then the idea, obviously, is potentially refinance when the rates drop, or your job might actually get better and you learn how to budget more.
Well, think about this too. You just hit something that's really, really important to think about. That out-of-pocket cash that we're talking about. That incentive money that we're using for the buy down is saving you out-of-pocket cash month over month that you can save to remodel the home, redo the backyard, but it's not being forced on you at 6 months or 12 months to get that backyard finished. You're not forced to do blinds necessarily right away because the windows are barren, they already have some form of coverage on them. And those costs can be very, very high. So leveraging what we can on the negotiating side and getting you into something that you feel comfortable with on that and buy product, that's going to be important to open up a plethora of avenues with the home itself and making it your own.
So you being a listing agent and buyer's agent, a great agent here in Las Vegas, would a seller be willing to do a 2-1 buy down to attract the buyer?
Most definitely. Well, think about this. Again, they're making a mortgage payment more times than not. Not everyone has a free and clear mortgage. Maybe 40–50% of the entire country has free and clear title ownership. So more times than not, we're dealing with someone who's making a payment. And they probably have a motivation as well. They didn't list their home for no reason, right? They either need to move, they want to move, new area, downsizing, upsizing, whatever it may be for the family. Something has caused them to want to sell. The longer they're in the position they're in, it's disadvantageous for them. Not to mention, as we're seeing, whether you're going the new build route or anywhere else, we're seeing appreciation everywhere throughout the valley. So every month that you wait, you're losing out on appreciation on that new product that you're trying to get into. So it's a point of how long do I want to sit if my home is in an area that might not be as desirable as another and I want to get out. We need to make something work for both buyer and seller. It's about a win-win situation in the long run. The consumer needs to want your home in order for you to sell. It's the same thing as buying a car or anything like that. There's so many options out there. There's so many price points. You got to be able to, find someone that wants it. Otherwise, it's going to sit.
And in this market right now, right, you have a lot of hesitancy from buyers.
Yes.
They're trying to find the right house, but at the right price and the right mortgage payment. And so the number of transactions that are going on right now are about the same as it was when I got into it. The total number of transactions, yet the population is 5 million people. So it's a very get out there, try and start the negotiation process. I really believe that the 2-1 buy down can really provide that. And we actually have a program called Sell Like the Builders.
Love that.
I haven't even told you about that.
Love that.
So it's a great program where we actually will help with the buy down on their listing. And it's really to try and put a lot of focus on the listing so that you can start negotiations with the buyer, because you have to get eyeballs on those listings. There's a buyer just make marriage together.
I agree with you. Again, the 2-1 buy down is beautiful. And I will go back to this over and over again. You go to a new build and you got that beautiful rate to start, or it's another 2-1 buy down, their version. They're selling off that loan and they're never talking to you ever again. So when the time comes and all people are getting to this right now, whether it's an ARM or a temporary, they're lost. They don't know what's going to happen. They're siphoning through the paperwork, trying to figure out when, what's the date? It's coming up soon. How much is it going to jump? Meanwhile, you've been dealing with someone, Bill and his team, through this process, whether it's initially getting the ARM or getting the temporary situated. They're locking you in. Hey, here's where rates are right now. We're 6 months out away from when you're due. Here's where rates are now. Thinking about it, figuring out what's going on. These are the trends. You're going to be their best friend through this process to make them feel comfortable when they're doing the temporary or the ARM, and then when they decide to refinance or go down another route. That's so important, and you're going to get the same communication hopefully from myself.
For
but
sure.
the lending side is so important with all of this that we're talking about, and that relationship building is so valuable, and it's different than when you deal with the new builds.
So I know you're a golfer, but I'm gonna throw you a little curveball. Okay.
Okay.
I played baseball. So here's a curveball. When sellers are trying to if they have excess inventory
Sure.
and they're trying to get rid of it, do
Mhm.
they ever lower the sale price?
On new builds
Yeah.
or in general?
On new builds.
Yeah, no, on new builds you can definitely negotiate. Definitely, it depends on when you're in the build. Leftover inventory is not good for new builds.
At the end of a subdivision, that's when the opportunity is. But in the beginning, they do master appraisals,
Yep.
and they don't like to lower the price because then it impacts their sales throughout. So instead of lowering the price, particularly in the new side of a subdivision, what they do is they those incentives.
You're right.
That's where the seller, many times when a seller doesn't have activity on their house,
Mhm.
what's the first thing they do?
You start freaking out. We're going to lower the price.
Lower the price. Lower the price.
Price reductions are so crazily available right now. You see it every day. Hot sheets on the MLS. Constant price reductions,
But
price improvements, whatever you want to call it. But it's not necessarily the best way.
No, what ends up happening is, some people will go, I'll just lop off $20,000 and lower the price $20,000 or $25,000 or 50, whatever it is, right? But those monies, it means nothing to the pain point of the buyer because the $15,000, $20,000 in their mortgage payment is pittance.
It's peanuts, but it's the
nothing,
optics too
right?
that they see that they feel like they can take advantage of you now.
Yeah,
that's on the back end. That's the negative that we get from the seller side is if I drop the price because of a price reduction for my client, then if I'm on the buyer side, because I deal with buyers too, I look at price reductions as there's blood in the water.
Yeah.
Something, and we're a shark and we're coming for it. What else can we get? We can, now come at them for a 2-1 buy down from a lower rate now and say, hey, you guys already dropped it. Let's come at you even lower. And they're going, oh, I didn't even think about that. The educated seller is always at an advantageous position because they need to think about these options that are available to them before they start going down that route and leaving themselves vulnerable to even more capitalization from the buyer side.
Yeah, and if you can actually save the buyer $300 to $400 a month, if not more, that's what's important to the home buyer.
Correct.
The sale price could be a little bit higher. They're going to make it up in appreciation, as we know, over time. And that's what they want. They want to have the lower payments so they can sleep at night, knowing they can make their payments and all that. It was funny. I had, just before you came here, I took a call. It was a real estate agent who called me, hey, Bill, what happens? I got a seller or a buyer coming in wanting $25,000 in closing costs, and they don't want to, do it but they'll accept $775 and no closing costs. Well, I said, here's what you can do. Just say, we'll take $800,000 and pay $25,000 of closing costs.
Yeah.
It's the same net. So it's all just understanding and educating. And for that buyer who's on the hook, who doesn't want to pay closing costs because they can finance it into technically the sale price, that's what they want to do. It's $25,000. And we all know, I see it every day. It's hard for people to save money. It's hard for people, you got the down payment, number one.
Exactly.
Then you got, another $15,000, $20,000, depending upon price range of closing costs. That's hard to take. And so if you can reduce that helps them tremendously. And then when the rates do come down, they're not out 2 sets of closing costs either.
Exactly. Cash is king. Everyone wants it. Not everyone has it.
Yeah.
And it can be leveraged, to not use it for certain things like closing costs. If you can get a seller that's able to take some of that equity that they already feel like they're going to be getting and get out of the home, they can provide themselves the opportunity to get to their next steps. And now somebody infiltrates into their new home. And it's a beautiful thing to take these into consideration when we're discussing listings, when we're talking to buyers about opportunities. As Bill said, $300 to $700, depending on how much the buy down is offered. That can make a huge difference in your purchasing buying power.
Yeah, and would you say we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, or are we pretty level? Where are you thinking?
It's always been a seller's market since COVID, unfortunately. We're trending towards a more leveled out market, but that's going to be indicated based off of inventory levels. And right now we're still under our desired rate, which is like 3 to 4 months of inventory. We're at the lower end of that 3-month spectrum. We want to be closer to 4 months. That gives a buyer the opportunity to feel like they're at a level playing field. The seller still has that. There's not a lot of product out there. You're going to come to me because of that, or you're not going to buy. And that's really their only option.
So it's fair to say that there are some houses that they are perfectly staged, ready to go, ideal, and they are flying off the shelf, right?
If they are priced right and marketed right, they are definitely coming on and off the market real quick. And it depends on the price point too. Certain price points are easier to deal with than others right now. You know, 500,000 or 600,000 and less. There's a lot more buyers out there than 600,000 to 800,000. That's
right.
A really bad, tough price point because the rates and their payments based off of a 3.5% to 5% down situation make it a little bit outside of their comfort zone or qualification purposes. So definitely the price point matters, but if you've got a hot product in a nice area and it's priced well and marketed well and it's staged or shows well when people come through the door, you're going to get your offers really quick.
But on the flip side, you would talk about a number of price reductions that sellers are taking just because it hasn't been moving, right?
Yes.
And so that's been a big thing. So a lot of them can actually use a 2-1 buy down as an offer to get them more activity on that listing.
Here's an interesting fact. Up until new builds became a big hot thing, it was about 90% resale, 10% new builds. Now in the market, we're at about a 60% resale, 40% new build situation. That is a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
And so with that, if you're on the resale side, you've got to take that into consideration. They're all offering something that you're not. So again, like he's trying to say, and like everyone else is going to tell you, Bill is spot on. The 2-1 or just offering incentives of some sort is a huge win right now because they're doing it. You've got to mimic. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And here's my opinion after 32 years buying and closing on 28 homes over my life, right?
Yeah.
I know when to buy and when not to buy. And what I've seen, I've made a couple of mistakes, obviously. Sure. We all have. But in my opinion, right now is the time to buy. There's a lot of sellers that are willing. Their house is on the market for a reason. They want to sell it. There's not as many houses as there are. If we start getting into this recessionary time period, what happened during COVID when the rates dropped? You had multiple offers. You had people paying above list price. That's not the case in many instances right now where the seller is like, I want to sell my house. They're negotiating.
Oh, yeah.
And when you get into a point where the rates do drop, and we were talking about it before we came on, is there a recession coming? We don't know, but it could potentially lead to the lower rates if that does happen. And then we'll see what happens with the prices of homes. They're going to go up.
Unless there's more
people are going to jump in.
Yeah, unless there's more inventory, those prices are going to go up. It's inevitable. It's supply and demand 101.
So last words, what would you recommend for a seller today, what they look at in terms of trying to sell their house?
The goal is to get offers in front of you. And one of the biggest ways to do that is to incentivize a buyer. Everyone is seeing all these glitz and glamour things on social media, on these billboards as they're driving around town. you're not on those billboards necessarily, but you definitely can be on social media with all these platforms that your realtor is involved with, and getting your product out there with those incentives somehow, some way, offering something, being competitive with what everyone else in the market is doing is going to make your product more desirable. So get showings and get offers by offering certain things as an incentive. I think it's a win-win for everybody. And if your goal is to sell the home, this is definitely one way to do it.
You want to start negotiations and then it'll go from there.
Yeah,
Max,
exactly.
Thanks again for joining me. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on Las Vegas Pitch Presents. Take care, everybody.
Take care.